Welcome back to Just Checks Out. I may choose a perspective and change a little bit on this video. Who knows? Okay, so because I just realized my hands can be out of screen. All right, so I hope everyone has had a wonderful year so far. I don't know when this is going up, so we'll run with the year. All right. I'm very much enjoying and looking forward to some books in 2022, especially sci-fi and fantasy. I saw that Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany and Jess Owens also did this, but I just did it because am very bad about keeping up with what's going on because I just randomly collect things that are, on sale. But I have put together a list of the ones that really kind of got my interest, and most of them, oddly enough, are retellings. Like, is this just going to become the retelling channel? And I have many notes over here on my screen as usual. I normally film in another location so I don't have to go back and forth, but my tree is here. My beautiful tree. And I don't want to lose that because it will not be lasting long. And my curtains. As you can tell, it is 3 o'clock and dark, so I'm working on finding the best light. Germany gets dark and stays dark for quite a while part of the year, so I'm trying to do the best that I can to find something. And we'll see how it goes. All right. So we'll start with January and February and so forth, but I don't have a ton on here. Some of them I noticed are on NetGalley, and I'm very excited because I'm hoping they will choose me to represent them because some of these books I really, really want to read. Okay, so first up is January. I know, right? Starting it in order. How dare I? I'm very into organization and timelines, and so we're just going to go with that. All right. Okay, first up is The Amber Crown by J.C. Bedford, and it is a January 11th printing, publishing date, whatever you want to say. I really like the idea of fantasy that involves crowns and stuff like that. I have been loving Jennifer Estep series. I appreciate the magic and the elements of that, and there's a couple of them in this video that follow both retelling and also kind of royalty. So I don't like to read about romance royalty for the most part because it's so weird to me because it's such an imbalance. But in this one, I'm willing to try it. All right. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of, what this is about. What I've done is I've taken a little bit of each blurb and I've talked about what really piqued my interest and why I wanted to read it. Like what kind of got my attention. So, give me a moment. I'll be reading to the left. Sorry to tell you. This can be very distracting. If you just don't want to watch this and just listen to it and do something else, I am totally understanding of this video. All right. So, a dangerous magical power is rising up in Biala Maisto, and the only people who can set things right are a failed bodyguard, a landstrider witch, and an assassin who set off the whole sorry chain of events. Ooh, adventure, ragtag group. Obviously got the found family element to it somewhere in there. I'm so there. Yeah, I'm very simple that way. And I appreciate that kind of stuff. All right. After that, on the same date of January 11th, publishing is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And oh my God, I'm so excited for this book. So I've seen it not really talked about so much as I've just saw it on this list. I found a lot of these, not all of them, but I found a lot of them on a website that I will link below. I'm sorry, the name just I spaced out on, and I can't look because it's on my phone, and my phone is what's recording this. Sorry. But I will link the description of where I got some of this information from so you can kind of add it to it. I'm thinking about doing another one of these for the other books that I'm reading about, but there were like a ton of notes for this. So. But this one is a retelling of the Moon Goddess, the story, and it's by Su Lin Tan. And basically, what happens when a goddess is freed from her position and she has to rechange everything in the world to create a better view and a better world, right? So I'm totally into it. Totally down for this. Cannot wait. And the blurb part that really got me interested was well, the fact I had no idea what this was about. You don't really learn about mythology that's not Western related, especially Greek or Roman. So I find this very entertaining and interesting. So to save her mother, I'm not going to say this name right. I am so sorry. Chien, maybe, embarks on a perilous quest confronting legendary creatures and vicious enemies across the earth and skies. When treachery looms and the forbidden magic that threatens the kingdom, however, she must challenge the ruthless celestial emperor for her dream, striking a dangerous bargain for which she is torn between losing all she loves or plunging the realm into chaos. And I mentioned the moon goddess part being different because there's actually another one that's not the same. But I mentioned releasing it because the a daughter is always on the lookout for her mother, right? Not always, but in fiction, in fiction, the daughters are often on the lookout for the mothers, and I find this fairly entertaining. So this just seems really cool. It's a duology. A lot of these on this list actually are duologies. And I was trying to find series that I haven't read before for the most part, with the exception of one in May, um, because I'm very bad about following series, but duologies I can handle. I think I'm much better at duologies because there's a start, an end, and a finish, and that's a huge for me. Now we're still in January, so in February, there's only one book that really sparked my interest that I could find on the list, and that was Bluebird by C.L. Perlot, and that is on February 8th publishing date, and it is a all right, here's the blurb, and then we'll just go from there. Okay. If Rig fails and her former faction finds what she stole from them, trillions of lives will be lost, including her sister's. But if she succeeds, she might just pull the whole damn faction system down around their ears. Either way, she's gonna do it with a lot of panache and pizzazz. I love it. This is obviously like more, I think, of an anti-heroine, which I love. I mentioned Jennifer Estep earlier in this video, and yeah, I loved her series, Jen Blanco, who also was kind of like, and well, she's still going on, but in the early parts, she was very like this, even though nothing is similar in that other regards of, they're, either way, it's gonna be on her own terms, and that's what I'm getting from Rig, and I love that. And then they also labeled it as a lesbian gunslinger, and I'm just like, I'm more so for the gunslinger part, just because I want to see how this works in a world that is not ours, right? Like, what form of guns do they have? What do they do with those guns? And wow, that's some interesting light. Watch out. Sorry, guys. One day I will find the right way of doing these lights, but it's going to take a while. By then it'll probably be, warm again. So a mute point. Anyway, I just she's taking down a corrupt system. I'm so here for it. All right, that's it. That's all of February. There are some months where I don't have any. So, and like the later part of the year, I have nothing past August. So, hopefully that gives you a basic idea. Okay, so in March you have the Circus Infinite by Quan Wong, I think. Again, I butcher names. I'm honestly, I'm very sorry. I do try, but I just, languages and I don't always get along. And so if you've ever followed me in my German journey, you know that some things just really don't work for me. But and this one publishes on March 8th, and I loved the blurb. It's you'll find out one in a second. With no other options, Jess fulfills the request. Espionage, torture, demolition. But when the boss sets the circus up to take the fall for his about to get busted narcotics operation, Jess and his friends decide to bring the mobster down. And if Jess can also avoid going back to being the prize subject of a scientist who can't wait to dissect him, even better. Okay, so let's go with this one more time. It's got the element of taking down a system. We just talked about, I love that in Bluebird. That's I that's part of my whole world things of growing up as I did, because I grew up in the 80s and this kind of a interesting experience in the 80s watching things corruption go down, even if it's something weird that you wouldn't expect in like the Breakfast Club. But anyway, so there's this very interesting element to that. The character's name is Jess. And also, I like the fact that whatever he has, whatever makes him different, can make him a target and a prize. And I like that. To me, that sounds very entertaining. So I'm down with that. I'm very easy to please that way. Also in March is The Way Spring Arrives and Other Stories, which is a translated anthology of fiction, and it's by Chinese, non-binary, and feminine writers, and I love an anthology. Honestly, that's how I find so many of my writers that I enjoy. But also, I appreciate it because I haven't been reading enough translated work, and I think that this is such a different perspective that I really think that it's going to give me something. One book that I really like is The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which is like by Milan Kundera, and oh my god, that's one of the like heaviest books that I've read probably. But what I liked about it was the fact that you have all these elements to it. And so I'm very excited to see what we can come up with on that. And then, finding out the women and how their roles were in that. And this one talks about gender in a different way, this anthology, and I'm very into that. I'm very excited. And also like there's the way that it's been described is very interesting because there's like Roses performing Shakespeare. Like in my head, for whatever reason, I'm seeing like the flowers and the animated Alice in Wonderland doing it, and I don't know why, but that's what my brain is seeing. And so I don't always like Shakespeare. I prefer his comedies. My favorite being Much Ado About Nothing, but I really appreciate that element. And so I like how people are seeing things, how these writers are seeing things in ways I necessarily would not. And I'm curious to see how it's going to look on screen. Well, not on screen, but on screen on my phone. All right, so that's March. Then you have April, and April has quite a. Ooh, April has like 4 or 5, so beware. Okay, so the first one in April is April 5th, and that is The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport, and it's going to be, oh, it's one of those, again, it's one of those bringing down the system things, and we all know I am such a fan of that. And the fact that it's done by this protagonist that's seeking revenge for something that was taken away and in a different world, oh, I'm so there. Okay, so this is the thing. Bent on revenge as much as discovering the truth, Akina pledges herself to the Praetorian trials, a brutal initiation that only a quarter of aspirants survive. So I didn't read The Hunger Games, but this has kind of got a little bit of that, like not The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins necessarily, but like the idea of that, of putting someone through those kind of horrific trials just to see who can survive. And then it says she subjects herself to the racism directed against her half Khanian heritage and the misogyny of a society that cherishes progeny over prodigy, all while hiding a power that, if found out, would subject her to execution or worse. Akina is willing to risk it all because she needs to find out who murdered her grandfather and she needs to kill them. So you have family loyalty, a corrupt system, fighting against the world that doesn't want you there. Like all these things are so into my element and I'm so excited for this. It's another duology. I double check. It is a duology. So again, I like it end point, beginning, and I like that. I can do 2 books. It's when books kind of get stretched out for monetary reasons or whatever that I can't really focus on it. And the second one in the month of April is also April 5th. And that one is In a Garden Burning Gold by Rory Power. Sorry, Rory Power. This is a very interesting look at what would happen if you and your brother had very different views on what the world needed while surviving abuse and how you learn to take it. And I think there's a strong, I think there's a strong value in that, and how sci-fi and fantasy often have overlapping themes in the world that's around us, and I think that's totally cool for me as a reader. I'm into that. I like to see how things are seen and how they're reimagined. So I think that this one is going to have that, and I think it's going to be very entertaining. The blurb explains a little bit more of that, but I wanted to put out why before I read the blurb. So it's now, with an independence movement gaining ground, other nations jockeying for power, and their father's iron grip weakening, the twins must take matters into their own hands and keep the world from crashing down around them. That's a lot to put on some twins that are younger, that are not the father, that have not been ruling for many, many years of tyranny. But as Rhea and Lexos travel beyond the security of their home to try and save their family, they begin to draw very different conclusions about their father's style of rule. So I like that it's going to be like who's going to find it okay and who's going to find it not okay, because that seems to be the sideline there. I love that kind of stuff. I always have. I always will. That's just me. All right, and then the next one is on April 26th, and that is Kaikey? Kakei? I'm sorry. I honestly cannot say this word. By Vanisha Navi Patel, and it is a retelling of the Ramayana text. Which again, these are a lot of these are texts we don't know as Americans. We don't learn these texts generally in our education. I had a comparative world lit class who, my teacher Josh was amazing, and he, we read different things from around the world versus just Western lit, and I appreciate it. But there was a lot of these that we didn't learn, so I've learned about a lot of the histories and stuff through things like books, and podcasts, and stuff like that. So this is a retelling of a villainess in that, and I love when you can give a villain more depth without changing who they are. And I really got that feeling from this because I've been following the author on Twitter and seeing what there is, and it just it's so entertaining to me. Not the book so much as the way that social media is talking about this book. And we know I love a good retelling, right? And it's said to be in the style of Ariadne, and we know that I loved Ariadne in this 2021. We know that's one of my top books. In fact, one of her books is on this list, so we're going to get there in a minute. But I'm very excited of this. And the blurb part says, but as the demons of her childhood stories threaten the cosmic order, the path she has forged clashes with the destiny the gods have chosen for her family, especially that of her beloved son Rama. She must decide if resistance is worth the destruction it will wreak, and what legacy she intends to leave behind. And I think that's something that's very relatable because like I'm 40 now, which seems weird to say, but anyway. So I'm 40 now, and I worry about what legacy I'm leaving behind to the world around me, and I get it, right? So to me, that's very understandable. And then the next book that I want to read is Nettle&Bone by T. Kingfisher, which of course is also Ursula Vernon. My husband loves Ursula, so that's how I know anything at all about her for the most part. He bought me one of her books off of Smashwords years ago, but I can't find it anymore, and I never got a chance to read it, which is kind of sad. We need to fix that. But anyway, this one is from April 26th as well. And it's like this is a sister and a family thing of like what happens when you notice your sister has been abused, mistreated, treated like crap for so long, and you're suddenly in a position to fix that problem, right? And so I am so here for it. So here's what the blurb says. Here we're not, now joined by a disgraced ex-knight, a reluctant fairy godmother, and an enigmatic grave witch, and her foul familiar, Mara may finally have the courage to save her sister and topple a throne. Do you see themes? I didn't notice these themes when I was putting this thing together, and then I was like, oh, there's a few themes. Toppling corruption, retelling, and we're only in April. I just wanting to like save your sister. That has such an idea, and I again like that ragtag group of people has always been like one of my favorite things that I've ever like read or watched. I think it's because I did grow up in the '80s, and you saw that a lot. You saw a lot of the ragtag groups. But like if you watch things like The Lost Boys, the movie, the people that are working to topple that structure are a bunch of kids, right? And so there's a lot of really interesting elements to that, I think. Can't wait to see what happens with this one. And then, of course, finally, on April 26th, because it's like beginning of the month, end of the month for most of these books on this list. I don't know why. But the last one is Elektra by Jennifer Saint. As we discussed, I loved Ariadne. I wrote in, like, I recorded a like 30-minute video talking about this and other things because of her making me refine retellings, and that's I think one reason that makes Elektra so special to me is this Jennifer Saint is very important to me as a point of reading, and I appreciated what she did before, and I don't know a lot about Elektra. I mean, like we know about the Freudian crap, but I'm talking about like I don't know a lot about what would it look like if it was written differently. It's the same reason that like I love Natalie Haynes' work in A Thousand Ships. It's like what would happen if you saw things from a different point of view, and I appreciate that a lot, and so I'm very excited. And on this blurb it says Elektra, Clytemnestra, and Agamon's youngest daughter wants for her beloved father to return home from war. But can she escape her family's bloody history as her destiny bound by violence too? And that's I like that kind of stuff because it really gets deep into what's going on, I think. And so I'm very excited for this one because I think sometimes women's experiences are absolutely written out of Greek mythology and Greek myth tellings because it doesn't center the masculine version of okay. Or, and you've got like all these jealous gods and all these other people that are making life difficult. And you talk about that a little bit more later in the wrap up or not wrap up, but anticipated reads, and so we'll talk about that then. But there's something very familiar to that, I think, in watching experiences be written out because it wasn't what they wanted. And then that's the end of April. Yay! We got through the first 4 months in half an hour. Okay, but May has got some that I was not expecting at all. So you have Siren Queen by I Ninvivo. I've never read her, so I haven't heard it, so I don't know. Published date is May 10th, and that is what happens when you have silent screen actors and pre-code era, and you want to succeed, you want to do well, but you also have literal monsters in Hollywood. Some of this kind of reminds me a little bit of Ring Shout, which I loved in 2021, in the fact that it's taking literal monsters and figurative monsters and putting them together in a world that we vaguely know. And so I'm definitely down for this. I love I love old Hollywood, like old Hollywood and classic Hollywood. So this is gonna be pretty interesting for me. Here's the blurb. But in Luli's world, the worst monsters in Hollywood are not the ones on screen. The studios want to own everything from her face to her name to the women she loves, and they run on a system of bargains made in blood and ancient magic, powered by the endless sacrifice of unlucky starlets like her. Sounds familiar. And this character is not white. I want to say Chinese. maybe. And for those who do survive to earn their fame, success comes with a steep price. Luli is willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means becoming the monster herself. Which it reminds that line reminds me a little bit of like a vampire. So it's this nice element of fantasy, but like realistic, but not. And so I'm very into this book. I'm very much looking forward to it, and the cover is gorgeous as well, by the way. And then after that, you have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and that is on May 17th. Yay, a middle of the month one. Okay, sorry. And this one I am so into because apparently this is the L month because the main character in this one is called Luli. Yeah. And so it's this very interesting. It's a remake and a retelling of 1001 Arabian Nights and what happens when this character saves the prince, the king's son, but in turn must pay for bargains to get out of an arrangement for not being an asshole as a thief, right? So it's very entertaining to me. I really liked the blurb, and so I picked one part that really stood out to me was in a world where story is reality and illusion is truth. Luli will discover that everything, her enemy, her magic, even her own past, is not what it seems, and she must decide who she will become in this new reality. Which I love when you meld and warp and change realities and what you think you know and what you know. And I love all that. That's so up there for me. So, I'm totally down for this. I cannot wait for this one to come out in May. Like, how do you survive? Like, what do you do to survive, and how do you do it in a way that does not negate what you know and then what you learn? Because those are two different statements. And so I'm very interested in this one. And then as the final May one, we have Amari. It's a great game by B.B. Alston. The only sequel in this entire thing. Everything here is, is primarily duologies or standalones. So I'm very interested in this. Amari and the Great Game because I loved Amari. I have recommended Amari so many times this year to so many different people. And that is because Jess Owens recommended Amari, and I was down for it, and I was very sad about the Goodreads and the fact that, Amari didn't win because I think it was up against things that maybe it shouldn't have had to be against. But I just loved it. I thought it was well written, and I'm very excited to see what happens because Amari's relationship with magic is important. But to me, her biggest importance one is the one between her and her brother Quentin. And I love how they communicate and how they get along and how they do all that kind of stuff. So please let me read that. And I think that sometimes in middle grade books are very different from what I had as a middle grade. Like I had Bruce Coble, no problem to him. Publishing has opened up more examples and more experiences. It's not all it's not all one thing. And so I really like the way Austin writes, and so I'm very interested to see how he takes Amari to the next level. Because Amari could have ended as a standalone. There's absolutely Amari could have been a single book. It wrapped up, it did everything that I wanted it to, but there was that one little hanging bit about Quentin and I don't want to give spoilers away for Amari and the Night Brothers, but family is big no matter where you are, but especially in a system where you don't know if you belong. And not belonging comes in many different ways, right? So I understand her relationship with her brother, and I want to see how that continues on to the next one. Because a relationship with a sibling, whether it be blood or not, doesn't matter. But a relationship with a sibling who you consider to be part of your family in such a deeply personal way, it does a lot for you and it stands you out, I think. So I'm very excited to see how the story goes because what your brother does and what you do, or what your older sibling in this case, but what your family does can affect who you are, and I want to see how who she is affected by what he experienced in his time with the agency, with the like weird like magic school meets Men in Black type world, you know? There's a lot of really cool things and a lot of cool elements there. But her refusal allows someone else to step forward to be the leader of the magicians. A magician with dangerous plans for the League. This challenge sparks the start of the Great Game, a competition to decide who will become the Knight Brothers' successor and determine the future of magician kind. It's a lot to put on a kid. I want to read it, obviously, but it's a lot to put on a kid. Just saying. And then in June, I only have one book on my list, and that is Wraith Goddess Sing by Maya Dini. I think is how you pronounce the name. It's what if Achilles was not a man? What if Achilles was a trans woman who somehow gets her wish to be in the right body with the right sentiments? And how does that change what we see in history? And again, retellings, mythology retellings. That this is a year of retellings. But what I really liked about was I hadn't thought about it. I've never heard of something like that before. And so I hadn't thought about taking a Greek hero and suddenly changing some of the most identifying features of their representation as, you know, this is a good man. This is a good woman. Like, I hadn't thought about that in that way. And so I'm very interested to see what's going to happen. And I feel like it's going to be good. I do have a little bit of hesitation because it seems to be vilifying Helen as well. And I feel like Helen sometimes gets a lot of vilification for being beautiful, and sometimes you can't control what other people do because they don't think of you as a person but as an object. So I'm a little bit hesitant on that. But the part of the blurb that really got me was Achilles has fled her home in her vicious Myrmidon clan to live as a woman with the Kalai, the transgender priestess of the great mother Aphrodite. But it's not Aphrodite who gives her her wish. It is of course Athena. So I want to see how that changes and how what you are is defined by you, but also what you can do is defined by others. And so I'm very interested in that because those goddesses have very different outlooks and different points, and different lineages and stuff. So I'm definitely into it. Yeah, we know I want to read Elektra and like some of the other ones on here, so that was an obvious one for me. And in August, I only have, I think, one or two. Yeah, I only have two books. So we're almost done. Yay! Lucky you. This one is The Book Eaters by Suni Dean, and it's on August 8th. And it is Devon is part of the family, an old and reclusive clan of book eaters. Her brothers grow up on feasting on stories of valor and adventure, and Devon, like all other book eater women, is raised on a carefully curated diet of fairy tales and cautionary stories. Very gender defined, right? But then what happens when what your line, what your son does is not in line with what others expect it to be, and how dangerous can that be? And I loved it. Like part of this reminded me a little bit of the Doctor Who episodes with Donna when they were in the library. It reminded me very much of that, and I don't mean that in the same way of the sci-fi element or whatever, but just the what happens when what you love the most or what you need to survive suddenly turns on you. And I just that was such a deeply impactful element, I think. And so this one is on NetGalley as a arc, and I really hope I get picked for it because I love this. And if you know of any books like this, please, 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 please tell me. I'm so into it. Please let me know. And oh, This is like one of the first things I saw on the list that made me go, I need to start writing a list now, because the website that I found all this on was basically just pictures and links to whatever was going on. So I had to kind of like what got my interest or whatever. And so I am a bit shallow. I do pick things by the cover sometimes, but this one, it was The Book Eaters, the title, which is like, oh, that could be very interesting. All right, one more book, I promise, and then we'll be done. And that is Fear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, and it's August 30th. And this is another one of the Moon Goddess ones that I was talking about, how what happens when what you need is very different from what becomes. It's published on August 30th. And it is, with the aid of June, a guard broken by his guilt-stricken past, and Kima, an outcast fighting for his future, the god escapes from her royal captivity and flees from her own children, the triplet terrors, who would drag her back to her unholy prison. And it is so that she embarks with her young companions on a 5-day pilgrimage in search of freedom and a way to end the moon throne forever. The journey ahead will be more dangerous than any of them could have imagined. And now, see, what really got me was the fact it's a 5-day. So obviously, timeline is going to be very short, but I want to see how deep the book goes. Also, the use of terror and being a main factor of keeping you in is very, like, psychologically, it's very up my alley. And I really appreciated the fact that, she finds people along the way. Again, if you notice, there are some themes in this little thing of mine right here, this video of mine, but I do wonder, because it seems like there's only one woman that's featured, and I'm kind of hoping there's a few more in there somewhere, maybe. Because it talks about his and her, and so I'm very interested. But that is all. I'm going to wrap this up because it's been quite a while, and I know that you guys do not want to stay around here forever and listen to me talk for, like, a bunch of books. But these are why I'm interested. It's not just the fact that I'm interested, it's why and what in the blurb kind of got my attention. And they were all a little bit different on what got my attention, but what really kind of snapped me into, okay, I want this book. I'm going to find a way to get this book somehow. So, or to at least hear this book or read this book or something. So I'm very excited. If you have any recommendations, what did I miss? Did I miss one that you think is going to fit my parameters of, like, found family, destroying the system, retellings, like something like The Book Eaters? Like, let me know. Write it down in the comments. I would appreciate that. You know the deal. Like, subscribe. Every YouTuber says that. So I really hope you guys have a wonderful day with whatever you're gonna do. I know this video is very long, and I am so sorry about that, since it's not the longest stuff, but I want you guys to get to know me, and the best way to get to know me is to read the blurbs and why I want to read the rest of the books. Alright, guys. Bye.